Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Shubhendu Park, consulting editor of Voice and Data, and your host for today's webinar. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the second part of the VND TLF dialogue series with the telecom service providers in India. In today's dialogue, we feature the leadership team of Vodafone Idea Limited, along with the telecom infrastructure provider STL. Today's interactive series focuses on how the telecom sector can drive the enterprise and social growth. The webinar is hosted by Voice and Data, India's oldest telecom magazine from the CyberMedia group. Before we start, here are some housekeeping essentials I would like to take it. For the duration of the presentation, the participants' line will be on a listen-only mode. After the presentation, we will have the question and answer session. You may send your questions through the chat and we will take it up during the slotted time. Please note that your feedback is also important for us. Hence, please submit your feedback at the end of the webinar. During the session, to make it more interesting, we have 2 poll questions for the participants, and those will the questions will be coming up on your screen. Please respond to it, and then we'll ask the speakers to analyze it. So to begin the session, I would like to welcome all our speakers, the leadership team of the company, and is responsible for networks, IT operations, and overall technology strategy. In his earlier role with VIL, he has served as a director of technology and has spearheaded the technology and network infrastructure for the company. A career telecom professional, Mr. Vora has spent over more than 2.5 decades in the telecom sectors across the USA, Europe, and Asia. I also welcome Mr. Abhijit Kishore, Director Enterprise Businesses, Vodafone India Limited. Mr. Kishore drives the enterprise business at VIL, enabling businesses across industry verticals, geography, and size to remain connected, scale up, and become more efficient by benefiting from the smartest and newest technologies. He has over 25 years experience in the Indian telecom sector and has served in different leadership roles in the company. May I also welcome Dr. Badri Gomatam, is the group CTO of STL. Dr. Gomatam is a digital network technologies expert and leads STL's core research in optical interconnect, virtualized access, network software, and system integration services. With deep expertise across photonics, subsystem architecture in server, enterprise networking, transport WDM, and storage communications, he leads the company's technology and solution vision. And last but not the least, I welcome CyberMedia Group Chairman, Mr. Pradeep Gupta, who will be moderating today's interaction. Mr. Gupta is a first-generation entrepreneur, set up CyberMedia in 1982. As an industry veteran with over 40 years experience, PG is highly reputed in the IT industry. He has mentored over 150 startups and is the co-founder of Indian Angel Network, Gemini Trust, the sponsors of IV Cap Ventures Trust Fund. He is also on the board of the IIM Calcutta Innovation Park. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. However, before I hand over the session to PG, may I request Ashok to please share the first poll question. Ashok, can you please share it? As we are aware, digital infrastructure is the core to the new normal and will be the driving force of the new digital and AtmaNirbhar India. So we wanted to know exactly how much do you think India spends on its digital infrastructure? Please quickly respond to this as we begin the session. And now I would like to hand it over to PG to take the discussion forward. Over to you, PG.
Hi, am I audible and am I visible to everybody?
Yes, PG.
Okay. So this poll can be can we remove this from the screen right now, the screen sharing? Okay, so it's been very fascinating last 3 months. Uh, we have seen the way things have changed, and I mean, all of us have been part and parcel of the huge changes that have happened in the last 3 months. And there has been enough talk about those, but still one can't sort of help but not start with that. So Vishant, I will start with you. Uh, Please share with me those 48 hours when the lockdown happened and there was a surge in demand. Telecom networks, there was a complete spike that happened. I'm sure that you would have set up a war room. Why don't you share the excitement of what happened in those 48 hours?
Well, thank you, Pradeep. Actually, you asked a very important question. Just to give you a bit of a context, within those 2 days, we experienced 1 year's worth of growth. So what we had experienced in the previous 12 months in terms of the capacity, we experienced it within those first 2 to 3 days. And it was a massive effort to actually get people to go and add all of these capacities, and it couldn't have been done really without the people. I know this is a technology discussion, and cyber media is a technology focused group, but I tell you, behind all the technology, it's all about people. And it was a great team we have in VIL that really stepped up to the task. And we added a lot of soft capacity. Many people will know that we have the largest holding of spectrum in the country. So we had a good base to start with, but we needed to activate a lot of that spectrum with soft capacity. So all of that was done while people were working from their homes, using their home computers to dial in and add all of this capacity. The other thing we needed to do was the surge. Of course, the overall volumes went up, but also the traffic shifted across different parts of the network. So, for example, South Mumbai, which used to be the hotspot, suddenly North Mumbai, where people actually live, where all the consumption was happening. So we needed to move the capacity over there as well. So a lot of field force actually got out and got that capacity added. And of course, we had some very heroic stories. For example, in one of the enterprise clients in Delhi, I had a problem with the connectivity, and our technician actually walked 10 kilometers to get to that place because he couldn't find the proper transportation. People were being stopped in cars, etc. 10 kilometers to go and restore the service. So, all kinds of heroic stories and a massive effort. But you know what? Always about people. I've been in this industry 30 years, and I can tell you, without people, technology doesn't work.
So did you lock people in the knock?
So, no, actually, our knock has been empty for last 3 months. We are
Oh,
working
wow.
with less than maybe about 5% of the staff. The other 95% is doing all of their activity from home through remote dial-in, and of course we got all the security protocols and controls in place. But 95% of the people are doing all of the work from their home, and that's a big revelation for us as well, because we have a massive. Actually, we have two massive facilities for now. One in Pune, the other one in Hyderabad, and it's been a revelation that actually a lot of these activities can be done from home, and there's going to be a lot of rethinking on that.
That's really a wonderful story. Hats off to the team at Vodafone and in fact the entire industry, because the way the telecom industry reacted to this massive surge in traffic and the way seamlessly. I don't think as a user we ever realized what is the kind of thing that has happened. But kudos to you and your team for absolutely fantastic, you know, sort of doing work on a war footing.
Thank you.
Let me start with you. So the same sort of a thing as far as the businesses are concerned. What are the shifts? So there was one story which Vishant shared with us. I'm sure you have many more stories to share. of how the shift happened in terms of the corporate users and how did Vodafone react to that?
Yeah, thanks, Pradeep, to be part of this interesting discussion. And what Vishant just shared. We've kind of lived through those moments for the last 100 odd days. Before I get into the question that you've asked, let me kind of share how we are kind of making that move. I think we as telcos, have kind of really made a move from being a traditional telecom player to being a tech co, if I could say so. And that's the shift of movement of a connectivity to moving into a collaboration, security, cloud space, managed services, and all. And that's a big shift that we are seeing in the industry. Traditionally, if you look at a telecom space, connectivity and the reliable connectivity, both wireless and wireline, has been a forte. I think we are seeing a clear shift. Even in the earlier times, we used to provide the reliable network, but now in the scenario, which is the current scenario, we see a clear shift in having a digital transformation, where everything is a service. You have cloud, you have collaboration, you have the scalable network, you have the SD-WAN, you have managed services, you have the cloud telephony. So the shift is very, very evident and clear. The second thing that we see, which is related to what, in the current situation that we are seeing, the new normal, which is home as a new office. I think, and today is pretty evident, everybody's kind of joined in from their own home. How do you really make this work for the enterprise specifically? I think that's a very, very critical part that, we see a shift happening, whether it is mobility, everybody probably, and then Vishant said that, we have surged and the traffic is surged, in 1 week for a year. All of that needs a huge amount of data utilization. So we have kind of dealt with that situation very, very fast to make sure that our customers and enterprise customers, the SME customers, are equipped to kind of handle that kind of a data usage. The other thing is a scalable bandwidth to make sure that the efficiency and the productivity of our customers and their employee force is not really compromised. And for that, as you would imagine, this is a transition which happened overnight, and we needed to respond very, very quickly to all our customers, on making sure that the bandwidths are provided on time, because it was the need of the hour. And I think the third thing that I really see is the automation in the value chain, and the way things are moving, whether it is a demand supply, whether it is your SCM, logistics, all of that is really making a shift now. I think we are designed to serve the scale with utmost flexibility is what the way I will really want to put the current situation, Pradeep.
So that's very interesting when you said everything as a service. I think that was a big sort of a transformation that happened. And also, I think, these last 100 days have proven to us that a lot of these blocks were actually in our mind. Whenever there were debates about work from home and productivity and so on, people believed that it could never be done. People had to come physically to an office. When you start talking about, as you said, everything as a service, a lot of things were not really believed that, they would be everything as a service. So, so Vishant, digital transformation has obviously got accelerated because of, the changes that have happened in these last few days. What do you see in terms of, what kind of changes will now get permanently embedded in us?
I think many of these changes were already in motion when the pandemic hit us. So I think digital is clearly something that was happening across the world, including within India and in the enterprises. Cloud was another big trend. Data analysis, very, very big trend. So all of those things that were already in motion now, I think, are going to accelerate so much more, because people have actually discovered through the last 3 months that without this, actually, you don't have a business, and you actually can run your business so much more productively by having these things. So I think those trends will accelerate much further. In our case, for example, if we hadn't been cloudified, as I like to call it, we wouldn't have been able to scale up a lot of these capacities. We have actually been cloudifying our network for the last 3 years or so, and we have 80 locations where we have cloud set up, which is, by the way, the largest deployment of cloud in the country. And then because of that, we are able to add capacity so much more quickly. So that kind of agility and flexibility to be able to scale up or down your according to your business needs is so important and critical in today's world. So I think the adoption of cloud is going to accelerate substantially as a consequence of this. Digital, of course, without digital channels, people would not have been able to do many of the daily things in life because all the stores were closed. So if you want to do digital, then telecom is essential. We are the backbone on which all of these other digital services run. So it's a great opportunity for our company, our business, our industry, really to become the platform for the digital India, because it is on the platform, this digital connectivity platform, that a lot of the other services will be built. And digital and cloud go hand in hand, because you cannot have a very scalable digital solution unless you have cloud. And we've been making a lot of investments in that, and I think the time's now gonna, times come where these investments are really gonna pay off.
That's wonderful. So, Badri, that automatically brings me to the question that I would like to ask you. Vishant used the word scalability. And, this was unprecedented scalability that happened, and as was said by speakers earlier, the pattern also changed. Okay, so what role technology, what role, SDNs and so on, would you just like to walk us through that scenario?
Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to take a short step back. While the last 100 days has given us a lot more clarity on the need for the digital, the experience, the bandwidth that goes with it, and the various things that impact your lifestyle. The one part that is important is that a major part of the world is still not as connected as we would like it to be. Right? About half of the world is still looking for infrastructure, fiber-based infrastructure. So the sort of the physical part of it is still important. Let's say part of this equation, and I think this is only clarified it for us. But going to your back to your question about scale, I think the perspective that we would, at least I would put on the table, is how can you scale as efficiently the software side that you would on the infrastructure, that you would want to do on the infrastructure. So that is, I think that journey is still on. But on the pure, let's say, technology question of how does SDN and how do these things, I think two major shifts. One is that the communication technology itself, with the emphasis on software-defined networking and user plane, control plane separation, all the technologies that make it cloud native, contributed tremendously to the scalability, right? Especially on the enterprise side, the ability to offer alternatives such as SD-WAN and make it communications infrastructure, right? Or your communications spend. These are some examples of how you brought scalability into the demand that you're seeing right now. But I think we still have some journey to go. I think the push to infrastructure improvement is still ahead of us, and that is something that obviously STL is very excited about, and we'll see how that plays out in the coming months and years.
Okay, Shubhendu, are the poll results in? Because you had asked, flashed a question. It would be okay. 3 to 5%, 22%, 38% say 2.5 2 to 3%, 1 to 2, 0.5 to 1. Gentlemen, panelists, would you like to do you concur with what the poll results show, or you have a different view?
Who wants to go first? Vishant or anyone?
Well, you know what? I would say one thing, which is not here on your screen, which is not enough.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, but even then, what do you think is the actual range that we are in? We are actually, where only 1/5 of the audience polled, which is under 1%. That is the sort of a number that we are actually investing in terms of infrastructure.
Yes, I was about to say that.
Very
Yeah,
clear that we need to invest more in infrastructure, and most of us believe that we are doing adequate investment in infrastructure, but it's actually much lower. But we will talk more about it when we have a future look and we look at what kind of stuff we should be doing there. And perhaps this may be the time for me to also ask a second poll question. So Ashok, if you are ready, can you share the second poll question also with the audience, which will lead into my third segment of the discussion? But okay, so the penetration of fiber to home has been growing world over. What do you think is the fiber to home penetration in India? And the four choices are 50%, 25%, 10%, and less than 3%. So, would request people to answer this question also. Okay. The question clear to everybody? And if it is, then Ashok, can we come back into the... Can we come back to the discussion mode, please?
Sir, 20 more seconds, sir.
20 more seconds. Okay. All right. Okay, so you mentioned about the digital transformation that now has got accelerated, and not just accelerated. Now it is a way of doing business. I mean, it is the new normal. Okay, so Abhijit, in this new normal, what will be the network-centric business models? When you said everything as a service, what kind of business models are we looking at?
Pradeep, the way I really look at it is that our role in the new normal, and the way I really look at the new normal is it's still in infancy, and it's very, very hard to kind of define what the new normal is going to be. And to that effect, I think the business model, which is a network centric, will really depend on the need that will come and evolve over a period of time. And I think as an industry, as a tech co-industry, we have a huge opportunity. And also going back to the first poll question that you have, and the kind of percentage that we saw on the digital infrastructure, I think we have a huge opportunity there. I see clearly a couple of things coming out of the new normal. One, I will start by saying probably smart automation and smart automation through IoT. I think there's a huge demand for that in the sector, which is say healthcare, for example. Now we will be coming out of the COVID. Healthcare is going to be a very, very critical sector. Testing kits, the units. How do you really measure all of that and transfer the data back, and how do you do the smart analytics? So that's going to be a very, very critical part to our business. The other one, which is clearly going to be again related to the smart automation, is on the manufacturing sector, both in the automotive as well as the other manufacturing sector. So that's another key area on the network centric that we see clearly emerging out. And we as Vodafone Idea Limited is pretty entrenched into the end-to-end of the IoT and the smart automation, which essentially means that it's really not only about the connectivity, but also about making sure that you have the platform, you have the devices, and you have the managed services along with the connectivity. So those are a couple of things that I think is going to be a very, very clear area from the network-centric things, along with the other thing that we spoke about, which is cloud and the fixed line businesses and the audio and video conferencing. Those are obviously going to be there. But that's the shift that I really see that happen.
And for that, is Vodafone Idea coming out with different products, different services? What is the new kind of offering which would be there for enterprises so that they can benefit?
So see, on the IoT, if I were to really talk about it, we are pretty advanced as far as the eSIMs is concerned, which basically is a multi-profiling of a SIM, and we are in advanced talk and have done. I can't really reveal the names right now, but we have done a lot of POCs with a lot of automotive companies. Virtually, if you have to look at a Vodafone as a global standard on the IoT part of it, we are the world leaders. Most of the car manufacturers uses our connectivity. In India as well, we are in talks with most of the large automotive companies, both in the commercial as well as in the passenger segment. And that's one thing that we clearly see that coming. On the healthcare sector, we are looking at a thermography. That's a big thing that we are trying to look at, and how do we really position that along with our IoT solution. So those are a couple of things that we are really looking at. Cloud, definitely, as Vishant also alluded, we have 80 centers already, and we're trying to take that closer to the customer and see that how can we benefit the small and the medium enterprises. So those are a couple of things that you can see that coming.
Wonderful. And therefore, connected to that, what are the kind of technologies, Vishant, that will emerge as very, very strong things? And therefore, what is it that Vodafone Idea is investing in terms of specific technologies?
Pradeep, for the last 2 years, even when we were very, very busy doing the merger and the integration of two networks, in parallel, we were investing in the next generation technologies. So the network architecture that we have adopted is really a 5G ready architecture. And all of the investments we've been making in our network are future ready. Clearly, cloud is a big area of transformation. We have done it. I believe we have the most advanced deployment of a completely open cloud across the country, in the most locations. The other thing is also we've invested in a lot of the wireless technologies, things like massive MIMO, which is again a 5G generation technology. We have deployed it in over 12,000 sites across the country, which is again the largest deployment in the country by far, and it's I believe the largest deployment outside of this technology. Similarly, we have made a lot of investments in some of the IoT capabilities, and that is, I think, going to be a very important area for Abhijit and his team. But it will also be important in many of the consumer spaces, a lot of the consumer space as well. I think that is going to be another technology that where we have focused a lot of energy in getting ourselves ready. And then, of course, the analytics. Analytics is going to be the next big thing, because it's not only about carrying traffic, connecting people, and all but it is about getting the insights from all of these transactions that you can turn into some sort of a business value add, and more importantly, a value add for the consumer, for the user, for the enterprise, so that they can benefit more in their daily lives, in their daily transactions. So I think that is going to be the other big technology that we are making a lot of investment.
Badri, would you like to add to that in the sense that more than 350 patents? We are talking about the new normal. We are talking about a new enterprise behavior. We are talking about a new consumer behavior. And therefore, what do you see as the evolution taking place from your point?
Yeah, absolutely. So the two things I think absolutely concur with what Vishant and Abhijit were explaining on their investments. Telcos are responding to both the time of, I mean, the modern situation, the current situation, and the organic growth. If anything has come, it has only accelerated the vision that was already in place. But one thing that, that from an architecture perspective, what we are experiencing or what we see is that there is a wireless and wired convergence. In other words, people are looking at a network architecture where you spend once in the last mile and you build out your your physical infrastructure needs in a converged manner. You do it all at once, and the need of the hour today is literally in the last mile. Right? I think people have built out their core networks and their city networks and so on. And this convergence actually brings an important place for all of these technologies that that Vishant just mentioned at the edge. Literally, I think telcos have an edge at the edge, if you will. That is a place where you all these use cases of low latency and bringing in the next generation vehicular transport, AR, VR, gaming, streaming. These use cases are enabled by a converged network and the cloudification of connectivity. What we mean by that is the ability to run your RAN network and able to run your fiber to the home or FTTX, on a common cloud platform. And these are some examples that both on the infrastructure build out, where we've been able to make that very efficient and converged for some of our customers, and also investing in the next generation of open and disaggregated RAN and FTTX technologies, which we will be rolling out in the next in the coming months. And these are some of the areas where we have focused on in the last couple of years, along with, of course, our fiber and cable technologies that have helped make this transition go of installation of the network, of managing the network, of designing the network very robust and very efficient, and I would say last a very, very long time, especially in places like India. We're looking to build 25, 40, 30, 40 year long networks, and these investments have to last that long. And some of the areas where we've been focusing on is actually to bring that that sort of comfort to the operators and the service providers that the investments will last for such a period of time, especially on the infrastructure side. So that 358 patents, a lot of it is going in that direction.
So before I move on to the next segment, I see one question from the audience, which is very relevant to the discussion that we had just now, and I'm just reading that. Will dismantling of license requirement drive investment in equipment for creating networks required for manufacturing industry, factories, which require next generation technologies to lift their capabilities? Okay, so perhaps Abhijit and Badri, if you would like to answer.
Sure. Maybe Abhijit would like to go first, or?
No, you can go but first, Badri. Sorry.
So okay, so let me just
repeat the question, please. I missed the second part of it.
I will just repeat it. Will dismantling of license requirement drive investment in equipment for creating networks required for manufacturing industries and factories, which require next generation technologies to lift their capability? So, in terms of the manufacturing sector, how exactly will investment be driven to find solutions for the manufacturing industry?
Abhijit, would you like to go first? Or? No, please go ahead. Yeah.
Or Vishant, if you want to take that question.
So it is not very clear to me which license requirements we are referring to. Are we talking about telecom license or the general licensing requirement, infamously called the license Raj? I think we can all agree that the license Raj needs to be dismantled. The lesser, the better. It is good for the economy. I think there is a general consensus on that. So I personally believe that that would definitely, ease of doing business is such an important factor in driving the economic growth in any country, including ours. So absolutely, I think the minimum regulation is important. Now, when it comes to telecom licenses, I think it's a little different situation because there are many considerations that go into this industry. The first and foremost, the amount of spectrum that we buy and the prices at which we buy. So I think that's a very complex issue. So I'm not sure which licenses we are referring to here.
Okay. In
Also,
terms
Pradeep,
of
I
manufacturing,
don't know if the question was more on the capex and opex part of it. I'm not very sure on this because there is no license from the manufacturing side of it. It was very specifically mentioning on the manufacturing side of it. So not very clear on what part of it is referring to. But if it is
license was
probably
more for
managed
the
services,
network side of it. Yeah, that investments in networks that are required for, the kind of need that the manufacturing industry would have. Because I guess manufacturing industry, if you're talking of, huge amount of automation and so on, therefore there are going to be very much more potent networks that would be required.
yeah, the way, see, I mean, when I was talking about manufacturing and an automotive industry, I was more referring to the how do we bring the efficiency, and when you see the net impact value of the investment that is required today to drive the efficiency and the productivity through the smart analytics and the business, I think it's a very fine business case to kind of go for it. That's the way I really look at it, but I'm not very sure of what license fee that is being referred to here.
Okay. Let me move on to the next part of the discussion, which is on the PM Modi also gave us another mantra, which is of AtmaNirbharBharat. So let's talk a little bit about AtmaNirbhar Telecom. Abhijit, telecom as an industry and telecom also as a platform, okay, as an enabler. So walk me through how telecom as an industry you see Atmanirbharta happening, and also telecom as an enabler. What do you think is going to be the role in terms of Atmanirbharta for the industry?
Yeah, so I'll take the first one, and probably Vishant can add in from a Atmanirbhar technology. But I think the way telecom and the telco space I see, more than a Atmanirbhar telco, actually telcos provide Atmanirbharta to the industry. That's the way I really look at the being Atmanirbhar. As far as the telcos are concerned, I think we are pretty heavily invested not in the current as well as the future technology, the way Vishant just explained, whether it is a 5G regulatory technology, and the whole emphasis that we have as an infrastructure and a solution provider is to ensure that whatever is required for the customers, because the needs are evolving and it's changing at a very rapid pace. We are able to keep pace with that, and that's how we call ourselves a self-reliant, to make sure that we keep investing in the technology which is the future. Which is whether it is massive MIMO or cloudification that Vishant referred to. Going to the second part of it, the way I see telcos providing self-reliance to the Indian industry, I would really look at it from 2 points of view. One is to make sure that we have one part of it, which is how do we make sure that the digital initiative of the Digital India, that part is kind of held, to get that objective met. And to that effect, we are partnering with the Government of India in various projects, whether it is agriculture, education, power, smart metering, lots of product where services where we are really partnering with the government to make sure that the Digital India vision is kind of clearly met. That's one part of the self-reliant. I think the larger part of being Atmanirbhar, to my mind, is to focus on the MSME segment of it, and that clearly is a big focus area. And if you were to really look at it, today's situation, the biggest challenge that a SME industry is facing is about how do you really connect to the customers. And if there was any better day to kind of have a digital transformation as a part of the agenda, that is today. And that's where I think a telco as an industry plays a very, very critical role to make sure that that segment is kind of made self-reliant by introducing various services, whether to be in touch with the customers primarily. How do you take your product and services to the customers online, and how do you do it on the fly? How do you make sure that your demand and supply logistics are maintained, and how do you automate that? I think all of these elements are going to be very, very critical to make the MSME part of business, a self-reliant business. So that's the way I really break that being self-reliant. I'm not really touching the larger enterprise, which is part of us, which I'm sure are already a self-reliant industry from that point of view. That's the way I really look at it, Pradeep. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, this transition from a pipe to a platform is something which will help industries becoming AtmaNirbhar, becoming self-reliant is the essence of what you are saying. So, Vishant, in the past, when it comes to technology, we have relied first on the Europeans or the Americans, and lately on the Chinese and so on. When you look at 5G, when you look at security, when you look at SDNs and so on, what's your take on what really is going to be the self-reliance as far as technology is concerned?
So let me build on the AtmaNirbhar statement that Abhijit made. I think we as an operator have first and foremost, the primary responsibility is to make sure that we make our society more productive, our users more productive. And how do we do that? By bringing the latest generation of services and capabilities to the market fastest. Because when we delay bringing those technologies to the market, there is a larger cost to the economy. So I think that is a very important aspect. How quickly we can bring those latest benefits of the digital age to India. And that should be a very important part of any of the considerations in the policy making. And when it comes to where the society globally and the technology globally, where is it headed? Almost everything is becoming software oriented. It is driven by software much more than hardware. Now, software, we as a country have actually a pretty good capability, right? We are the software powerhouse of the world. So I think that's a great opportunity for India, because even telecom, as we cloudify our network, for example, or we use the word SDN, the S in the SDN is about software.
Yeah.
Right? Software-defined networks. I think those are the areas where we really should be focusing, because it plays to our strength as a country, and that's something that we as operators can definitely play a good role in supporting. So I think we have to make sure that we are playing to our strength by making sure that there is good local-made software, along with making sure that the latest kind of benefits of the technologies are made available to the market so people can use them to create greater value in the overall economy. And I think that's how we do our part in making India AtmaNirbhar.
Vishant, do you see a possibility where the industry comes together and says that, okay, fine, these technologies we will develop on our own, and we'll push them on our own? Or are we just going to continue to rely on somebody to bring us 5G and so on?
So my view is that technology is an incredibly fast-moving sector, and
Right.
we need to be a bit more future-looking. And what that means is we need to try to anticipate where the technology is going to be 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, and make investments in that. In the technology, I guarantee you, in 3, 4, 5 years down the road, it's going to be 80% software driven, maybe 90% software driven. And I think that's very important, because if you focus on things where you think the technology is today, then by the time you get to it, it's obsolete and it's irrelevant. And I think that is a very important point. So getting that timing right and making sure that we bet on the right technology for the future is very important. So that's why I think software is the area where India can really play a big role The other thing is, I think we as a country need to produce many, many more patents. We produce very little patents in the world. And I think there is definitely scope to build up that intellectual property portfolio as a country, which will benefit us directly and indirectly in stimulating the entire tech sector.
Good, good, good. So, I think that automatically brings me to the next segment, to a man who has more than 350 patents. So, Badri, if you look at the topic that we were discussing today, it was telecom for enterprise and social growth. So we have discussed a lot on the enterprise, but may I request you to focus a bit on social growth? What kind of social changes you see coming because of this new normal which is there, and what are going to be the technologies that will help us drive that change?
Sure. Hey, so I just wanted to sort of take a few steps back to the point that Vishant opened the discussion with. It's about people, his people and the way they responded. In my view, just building a team in R&D and putting this journey together, or just taking a few steps back, there's an incredible potential with the young people and then the engineering talent that's available in the country. It's just amazing how much is resident just below the surface. So what we've been able to do, Pradeep, bring in this many patents, is just because it's purely homegrown. There isn't really an element of infusion of capability or technologies from outside the country. I mean, we are 10% of the global supply of optical fiber. All of this is homegrown. So STL as an organization has been in this AtmaNirbhar journey with sort of a DNA for a very long time. And to the point that both Vishant and Abhijit made earlier is that there is a hunger and a thirst in the people to build stuff. Whether it is hardware or whether it is software or whether it is systems or satellites or whatever. I think the ability for India to leapfrog is very, very real. I think the confluence of factors are coming together and highlighting this moment. But I think in our experience, we have realized it, we've been able to take advantage of it, right? So on one side is that there is the consumption that we talk about of people wanting to socialize and consume bandwidth and stuff and so on and so forth. But socially, I believe people will, in this sort of journey that the Prime Minister talks about, you will soon see how we are able to build things. There are an incredible number of hardware and software startups looking 3 years, 5 years out, satellite communications, launching their own satellites, building radios, building massive MIMO, building software stacks. And this, I think, is going to be sort of the story that will explode into this year of how the younger generation or the next generation is about to show how this can be done, right? And then we are ready to sort of work through the details of how to bring that to market. And our commitment is there as a company to making 4G, 5G, and we're even talking about with a lot of startups or the chip ecosystems to build the next beyond 5G today and bring that to market, right? So I think on a social side, I think the engineering and the technical and the sort of the media and communications talent that is latent in the country is just about to come out. And we really look forward to that because I think it's very real. And we have seen it, and you've seen the patent count and so on and so forth. It's all homegrown. It's all made in India. And we are very proud of that.
I agree with you. I mean, if I look at my own personal example, the way the consumption pattern in media in the last 3 months has changed in my household is, and I'm sure it has happened with all of us here. The way the changes have taken place in terms of OTT and the kind of bandwidth that in my household we are consuming, which is at least, I think, at least 30 times more than what it was earlier. So, we are talking about a very different kind of a thing. But Badri, do you see a geopolitical shift taking place there? in terms of the technology?
So I think I wouldn't say in terms of geopolitical, it becomes a bit complicated to parse the what is happening on a day-to-day basis. But one thing is clear, like the tech cycles that we have seen in the last, let's say, 15, 20 years have taken strong root in India. Software stacks, embedded software stacks, even product engineering, product design. A lot of the stuff is done in the country only for, let's say, exports or other business models, right? So for us, I think from that perspective, there isn't really a shift in that. What I think will shift is basically business committing to making these solutions being developed and sold out of India in a global market. And open standards, software-defined software really helps this vision. This brings to, let's say, reality, or helps bring to reality a vision that something geopolitical, if it shifts in India's favor because of the inherent strength that has been built up already. I don't think we have to fight anybody. We have the inherent strength to make it happen.
Okay, but there could be some specific areas where we can actually leverage our technology. Vishant, you were talking about software. Badri, you also referred to software, then security and so on. So perhaps is this the time for India to take the second part of the AtmaNirbhar mantra is also becoming vocal about local and taking local to global. So could there be areas like software and security where we could actually take a global positioning in the telecom sector? And
in my view, yes. In my view, it is yes.
All of you.
I believe, I believe there is a huge potential in that space, Pradeep. I think we need to now create the supportive ecosystem around it. Because one is, first of all, just getting the patent itself is how easy it is to go file for a patent, get one, is one. Then there is a whole ecosystem around it on how you monetize the patent, right? We need to develop that and mature that much more, really to kind of get the full value out of this potential. But I think there is an enormous opportunity for our country.
Okay, Abhijit, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, Pradeep, in my view, I think obviously the potential is there. I think it's also along with the ecosystem of mindset, and if we can do it outside, obviously it can be done here. And how do we really monetize that and scale it? I think is the ecosystem that probably I'll agree with Vishant that we need to really look at to make that happen. The potential is there, the talent is there, the skill set is there. It's just a question of putting all of that together and then scaling it up. And the way we really look at the next few years coming, I think that's where probably the whole industry is moving.
And connected with this debate is the question which I had earlier posed for the audience. So, Shubhendu, can we have the result of that second poll? Okay, so I think the audience got it right here. Less than 3%, 50% of the people have said that fiber to home FTTH penetration in India is dismally low. So, I think there is plenty of stuff that we can do at home to ensure that, this new mantra of connectivity which is there can actually become very, very strong, and we have connectivity available to each and every person. By the way, I'm sure people would have been sending their questions. So I would also request, if Shubhendu, if you can collect some of those questions and if you can forward those questions to me. I have one question which says scarcity of spectrum. Scarcity of spectrum has been an issue for the industry forever. Okay?
Forever.
Be any debate that can be complete without the scarcity of spectrum question being answered. Vishant, would you like to go first?
Well, I do not believe that there is any natural scarcity of spectrum. Yeah, I think there is so much spectrum available. India has the same amount of spectrum available as any other country in the world. Now, we have made it artificially scarce by having very, very high prices. That's a whole different matter. But if you really believe that telecom and mobile telecom is a critical driver of growth of the economy, perhaps we should look at some of the other countries like Japan on how they deal with spectrum, and China also. And we may find better ways to actually make this less scarce and therefore becomes the real driver of the economic growth in this country.
Okay. Badri, you want to add something to?
Yeah, I agree with what Vishant was saying, and just to add to that point, I think with the emerging these let's say differentiated technologies that are coming our way, the shorter range wireless, using the higher bands, bringing the cost structures down in the manufacturing of these technologies will lead to a proliferation of the use cases, right? And then you could use your spectrum much more efficiently. And when you combine that with a very good terrestrial, all of this is supported by a very robust fiber network anyway for the kind of demand that we're seeing. This will actually help, answer that problem. Is it a cost issue, or is it basically a resource availability issue? And over time, I think people will consume all the bandwidth that you will be able to provide. Right? So I don't see a scarcity, but I think we will be able to efficiently develop our way out of this.
Okay. Abhijit, one question for you. Telecom, gone are the days when it was treated as luxury. From luxury, it moved to necessity. But the last 100 days have shown that it is probably an essential service. Okay, but it is still not sort of classified as an essential service. What your view on this?
No, I mean, telecom is classified as an essential service in a today's scenario. And, I'm connecting this as well as the earlier question that you asked on the spectrum. I think the proof is right now. I mean, if you were to look at the 100-day and the kind of utilization that we've kind of gone through, and this is the right time for, people to kind of take note of that, to look at the spectrum and the scarcity and the pricing part as well. So that's one part of the business aspect of the spectrum. The other thing is that it is an absolute essential, and more from an enterprise point of view, because it gives you the tool in your hand to increase your productivity, efficiency, and most importantly in today's scenario, to make sure that your cost is optimized. I think, and that's the big thing that everybody is really looking at, and that's what probably telecom gives from an enterprise essential point of view.
Mm-hmm. Okay, some more audience questions. What would be the effect of eSIM on IoT that we talked about?
I think eSIM is going to be part of the IoT. I mean, IoT was that's the next thing that we are doing. It used to be a plain vanilla connectivity. Now we are moving into an eSIM, which will have a multi-profile, and that's the future that we are really looking at it right now.
Okay, there is one question for you, Abhijit, which says, how much time does it take for Vodafone Idea to provision cloud and connectivity service for an enterprise? And have you implemented SDN for enterprise services?
No, so I think, it can't be a plain answer to this question. Depends on what the requirement is. It also is dependent on the solution architecture which is required to kind of put that. But it's not going to take much time, is what I can say, depending upon what is required. On the SDN, I'll probably ask Vishant to comment if you've done that part of the network level or not.
Yeah, so thank you, Abhijit. I can tell you, provisioning cloud, I'm not sure what we are talking about here. Are we talking about starting from scratch, or are we talking about adding capacity to an already existing cloud? So I think, answer varies. But I can tell you for myself, for me to scale up capacity in my own enterprise is instantaneous, pretty much done within a day. And that just shows the level of maturity we have for our own cloud. I think on the SDN, we've done a lot of work in creating that capability and also working with some enterprise clients to run some trials. I think SDN is also a lot about how all of the management systems you put in the back to manage that SDN, and that is also maturing globally as we speak. But I think our experience has been that SDN services, depending again on the complexity, can be either instantaneous or take a bit of a longer.
Okay. Another question is, how can you help transform OTT channels digitally and engage customers? I guess I'm just sort of, trying to expand on this question. That, when this OTT demand shot up, the request which was made that, you need to downgrade the
Resolution
provided, so that the resolution.
Call it. Yeah.
What is your view on that?
Vishant, you would want to take that? You've done a lot of work in the initial
OTT.
Yeah. So I believe the question was how do you engage with them, OTT guys, or what was the question?
How can you help to transform OTT channels digitally and engage customers?
So I think the OTTs first of all require the reach, which is what we provide. Then they also care about the consistency of the bandwidth that you provide, which is where things like SDN will play a very, very big role going forward in future. The third thing that is very important to OTTs is latencies. So pretty much every application that you run, in the digital world, latency is very important because all of that buffering you see on your screen, flapping, which causes disruption in services, all of that requires consistent latency, and lower the latency, the better. So there again, there is a huge opportunity to partner with the OTT players, bring them closer to the network, so we can help give a better latency and a more consistent latency and a bandwidth experience. Now, the other thing is, I think the cloud is going to play, especially the edge cloud, is going to play a very, very critical role. Because as we get into more and more video-centric or very high bandwidth consuming applications, you need to really do less transport. You need to do as much processing as possible to the edge of the network. Because the OTT's business model on cloud is that they make their money from egress costs. So it is not from, they don't make money from, what you store. They make money from how you access it and get the content. And those egress costs can be quite prohibitive. So by having a network architecture which allows you to lower those egress costs by lowering the bandwidth requirements is very, very critical. So I think telcos can play a very, very important role in both of that by having mobile edge computing or computing at the edge. That is going to play a very big role in enabling even a greater growth for the OTT players.
Okay, we have many more questions. Shubhendu, I have to ask you how many, how are we doing on time? How many more questions is it possible for me to ask? Because my watch tells me that our time is up.
Yeah, we have overshot our time, but if the panelists are ready, maybe we can take one or two questions.
Sure.
Okay, so one of the questions which is there is just 1 second. Will the availability of E-band spectrum for backhaul help improve the network capacity to ensure quality of service during this national emergency?
So I think E-band is a very important resource that we can have as a country. It's a cost-effective way to connect the last mile, and is something that I think we do need a decision on as a policy. I don't believe it is something that is going to deliver an immediate benefit because even if that got freed up today, it will take a few months before the equipment actually arrives and you can deploy it. So it's not a panacea for the immediate pandemic, but I think it's a very important policy decision required from the government for the growth of digital India.
Okay. Is Vodafone Idea planning to launch EMBMS? What's that? Evolved Multimedia Broadcast Multicast Services.
So, you know, one of the rules we have in this kind of sessions is we never talk about any forward-looking things.
Okay.
Right? For the obvious reasons.
This has been asked already. We are number 2 in internet subscribers after China, whereas we are globally 132 after Afghanistan on the speed front. Is it the spectrum that is hindering it, or what are the other things which are hindering, you know, the speed related issues?
Who's going first?
Badri, you want to take that?
Sure. So I think we sort of touched upon it earlier in the poll surveys also, that the amount of infrastructure that is there to support the need is low, and therefore that is going to be one area for which you can look forward to increasing that. But the second part is also that now it is also a shift in the way the speed, the demand for this is perceived, right? We've gone through the last 6 months, and now we've understood as an economy how important this is, both from a policy perspective as well as a personal need perspective. So I think this is going to improve very quickly, in my view. It is already improving, this number.
Okay, so, you know, industry will not say it, but let me say it that, you know, these investments are absolutely necessary if we want to really deliver great quality of service to our enterprises and to our people. And therefore, the government at some stage needs to stop looking at telecom industry just as a cash cow. It has to start looking at it as an essential sector. You know, which is something which is absolutely fundamental to the growth of businesses, to improving the social fabric of this country, and therefore completely new kind of approaches have to be taken in terms of building up the infrastructure, the technology, the speeds, and so on. And with that, thank you very much, gentlemen, for a fantastic discussion on different kind of issues. And over to you, Shubhendu.
Thank you.
By the way, sorry, Shubhendu, just 1 second. There are still some unanswered questions. So, gentlemen, if it is okay, what we will do is we will collate these questions and send it to you so that we can get offline answers and then send to the people who asked.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll get back.
Thank you, PG. Thank you, all the speakers. It was a pleasure listening to you and learning from you. It was quite invigorating discussion, and I learned a lot. I hope the participants also enjoyed it as much I did. We now conclude today's session and request the participants to share their feedback that they will see on the screen. We'll also be sharing the recording of the session as an on-demand video on the Voice and Data website and the CyberMedia YouTube channel. Feel free to share and watch it again. And with this, goodbye till our next webinar. Stay safe and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.